And we're back to exploring Midjourney. I tried to use the typical photography parameters to check if they have an impact. And to make a long story short, it doesn't seem that there is a huge one. But let us go over the first parameter. I've used different lens specifications here, 18mm up to 300. I've always used the same seed and aspect ratio and the base prompt woman New York. And this one doesn't seem to have an impact at all. Here's 18, 35, and 24, and so forth. At some point I noticed that the models, they start getting close. So 55 and 85 is almost identical, only image 2 is a little bit different. But the other ones are very close. There are some variations in the clothing, and even here in 300 you can see the same model in 3 with red hair again. And usually what you would expect in photography is when you use different lenses, the face, it gets thinner or wider, and this doesn't happen for the models at all. So it should when Midjourney actually understands what is meant by using these lens specifications, and it seems like it doesn't, at least not for this basic prompt. So from my experience, I think that we can ignore adding something like this, a specific lens specification. Same goes for aperture. I started with our base prompt again, woman New York, seed 1 AR60x9. And then I went from 1.4 up to 22 for the aperture. And you can use this to adjust the depth of field. So if you make this smaller, you will get, or you should get, a lot of bokeh. And when you have like an f/22, you would have a maximum depth of field in most cases. And you should definitely have a higher depth of field compared to 1.4, 1.2. And I don't have that at all. So here is 2.8, there is some bokeh, 1.4 as well. And as I go up, it should vanish. But it doesn't. Here is 16. There is bokeh in the background, blurry depth of field in the background. And even with the highest value that I've tried, f/22, it still looks like the 1.4. So not much of an impact either. Shutter speed would be the next parameter. And this one is used in photography, for example, in extreme cases for light trails. So if you make it 30 seconds, you should get a lot of blurriness, light trails at night. And if you make it smaller, so for example 1/5000 seconds, it shouldn't have much of a blur, much of a motion blur or light trail at all. On this I have to say it has a little bit of an impact, but it's an unexpected impact. Here's the fastest shutter speed, and we already have blur, especially motion blur in the background in image 2. And the hair, you can clearly see that it's blurred, and it shouldn't add such a low parameter value. So I think that the token, or the, let's say, keyword shutter speed itself creates a little bit of a blur in Midjourney when you use it. The value doesn't have an impact, but I've also noticed that as I went up with the shutter speed time, so I made it slower, we definitely got more of these light trails. So here, for example, way more than in the beginning, and there's some movement indicated in image 2. So it has a little bit of an impact, but once again you would expect it to disappear when you go down with the timing. So 1/5000, for example, shouldn't have any of these light trails, but it has. So to conclude here, when you use it, you shouldn't expect to get rid of it, but you can add some of these light trails by adding, for example, 30-second shutter speed. Finally, I also tested the ISO from 100 to 6400. This adjusts the sensitivity of the light sensors in your camera. For example, you would use a lower value for sunny day. ISO 100 would be perfect for that, as the sensors don't need to be that sensitive. And as you go up, they become more sensitive, and you will also get more noise to your images, at least when you do it for real, so with a camera. But here in Midjourney, there is no effect. Here's the highest ISO. There should be a lot of noise. I can't find it here, so you can ignore that for the most part. As I said, this is just my experience. Maybe it's the basic prompt that I've used and it doesn't really run with these parameters, but the only one that seems to have a little bit of an impact is the shutter speed. Everything else didn't have an impact at all. I hope this video was still helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.